Mabuhay, Kamustika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. According to this clock, I was several minutes late, so I apologize for that. You know, the clocks are different here. We just had daylight savings time, so we had to manipulate the clocks a little bit. Last week I did a live stream. It was last Thursday, and we couldn't get it all done, which I knew we wouldn't because we were talking about Filipina qualities, and there's just too many to go over in one live stream. And probably some of you can think of some that I won't even cover here in these two. This is part two of qualities of a Filipina. Last week, part one, we talked mostly about qualities that I had gotten from two internet sites. Most of the qualities came from there, but I also added a handful at the start. And like I said before, I know, the more people that contribute, the more different qualities we can think of. Now, last week, the qualities were feminine, practical, loyal, loves children, bright, doesn't think too far ahead, finds joy in service, values education highly, family-oriented, speaks better English than most women around the world who don't have English as their first language, puts a huge importance on grooming and hygiene, charming, respectful to elders, thrifty, ambitious, hardworking, multi-talented, capable of multitasking, resourceful, feisty, intuitive, highly sociable, creative, highly opinionated, argumentative, loyal friend, overprotective, adventurous, and outgoing. So since I married a Filipina, and I'm very happy I did, I want to help foreigners learn about having a good relationship with a Filipina. So please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea. I hope you will leave comments and qualities that you see in Filipinas, especially if you have found one that you are very fond of. And don't forget to get notifications for upcoming videos. Get rid of that. So again, these come from, I'm not trying to plagiarize, and I will give credit to the person that wrote the articles. Most of them came from one. It was from a Filipino. So I trust what they say. And being married to a Filipina, I can kind of, share my perspective on whether I've experienced that or not. And I hope that others will do the same. So just continuing with the list, the next one was passionate. Filipinas are passionate. And I don't recall the author got this. I don't think the author I got this from expounded on this quality of passion. I think a person can be passionate but not show it much outwardly. Others wear their heart on their sleeve. This would be a good question to ask a Filipina. Ask her what she is passionate about. My wife is passionate about treating others the right way, about treating others with respect. I would say that she is passionate about her president, Rodrigo Duterte. She's passionate about her family, and my wife is passionate about her city, Davao City, where Duterte was the mayor for some 22 years. So I could tell right away when I first started relating to her, which was almost 4 years ago to the day, that she felt Davao was a really wonderful city and a very safe place to be. In fact, it was just March 17th of 2015 when I first winked at her online from across the world, and then 54 days later we're married. So what I share is from someone that took on the role of having to get to know someone very quickly and trying to make it work. I don't necessarily advise that for anyone. I don't necessarily not advise it. It just depends, how well you really feel like how comfortable you are anyway with the person that you've been talking to. Obviously, I didn't know a lot of these qualities. I had never read an internet article or a video on Filipinas. I just jumped in and figured, okay, I'm talking to a woman, and I'm looking to marry someone, and so that's just the way I went about it. And so we've been working it out, getting to know each other, getting along, you know, and I try to share what I've learned, um, on this channel. So it's working out well for us. Some of these qualities tonight will be a little not quite so positive, you might say, as they were last week. That's just the way the list developed here that I'm going from. Another quality here of Filipinas that he listed, and I can agree with, is religious. Whatever the religion is, it is extremely important that you get to know and understand what her and her family's beliefs are, because religion or faith is one thing that most Filipinos will never be willing to compromise on. So better if you agree on your religious beliefs to begin with, and to avoid future conflict, and also to avoid confusing your children. And that's what the author of the article mentioned. And I don't have any disagreement with that whatsoever. Although, I have heard of, instances where a Filipina will, adopt the religion or denomination of the husband. And but in this case, they're saying here that most likely that won't happen, but sometimes it does. Another quality of Filipinas they list is affectionate. Affectionate. My wife is affectionate, although sometimes shy. I want my wife to show affection to me by touch. I like public display of affection. I love to touch her, stroke her hair, her cheeks, rub her back, give her a massage. Sometimes she will do this for me too on her own, because she knows it is important to me. And when I think of being affectionate, I think immediately of touch. Maybe others have a different opinion or impression. Another quality of Filipinas they list here is romantic. Romantic. Filipinos are romantic. And I'm in big agreement here. My wife loves love stories. She loves fairy tales. She listens to love songs and watches romantic movies. Every time I've been in the Philippines, it strikes me how love and romanticism or romance is part of so many commercials and movies that we see. And I like that. It seemed corny at first, but it's part of the culture and a good thing. Whenever we're watching a TV and then they go to commercials, they're often very, romantic, like Jollibee commercials on TV, frequently of a man and a woman and falling in love, I think that's the message, and it's just a Jollibee commercial. So yeah, and in the movies too, I think romance is part of that. Another quality of Filipinos here would be emotional. Emotional. They write Filipinos are a sucker for love stories, happy endings, love songs, and anything that can make you cry. Now, I happen to be more emotional than my wife. She often says to me, "You're such an emotional man." And when we're watching movies, she's not usually the one that's getting teary-eyed over the shows. And that is how God made me, but I must be careful with the negative emotions, because that can work, against you. So this is part two of She's Always a Filipina to Me. I want to talk about qualities of Filipinas, and I hope some of you will join me tonight, because I know you're either married to a Filipina, you've got a fiance that's a Filipina, or you're dating a Filipina, and no doubt you have some favorite qualities, some qualities that attracted you to them in the first place, to look for a Filipina, and then you see those qualities in her, and so you continue your relationship with her, or you get married. So that's a simple topic for today. It's just Filipina qualities. I have a list here of a couple dozen from a couple of internet sites mostly that I got these from, just so I had something to go by. And then I'll interject, my thoughts. And I might not always agree or understand with the qualities that are listed, but at least it gives us something to talk about here. So another Filipina quality, and I told you this might not all be so much positive, but overreacts at times. Overreacts at times is one that they listed as, a trait of a Filipina that you see a lot. And this also has something to do with how she has been raised. And that's what they say. And I would like to know more about that because I'm not sure what that means. I mean, I overreact sometimes, and my wife has overreacted. I think that happens a lot when you're angry or irritated and feel misunderstood. But in our relationship, I'm the one that my wife says tends to overreact, and she's right. Like I said, I'm more emotional than she is, so I would not think that in my case, my wife, who is more quiet, would be the one that overreacts. But the person that wrote the article, and I'll link them both in the description box, felt that was a quality to list, overreact at times. Also, they list here, and I agree more with this one, Filipina quality, ultra sensitive at times, ultra sensitive at times. And let me know if you agree with this, or why you would agree with this oversensitivity. They say the Filipinos in general wear their hearts on their sleeves, and this might be tempered when outside of the Philippines. And maybe that's why I would agree that my wife is ultra sensitive at times, and I have to be careful with what I say. She's not as my sister was the most sensitive person I ever knew, so I have a little bit of practice in with my wife in trying to watch what I say. But ultra sensitive at times. Maybe you've experienced your Filipina being ultra sensitive. They list here another quality as possessive, which is kind of related to overprotective. I have read this often, and it is a good thing. And some may, substitute the word jealous. And if they're talking about jealousy here being overprotective or possessive, then that's a good thing because when you go for a long time of being alone and not being able to find someone, and then now you've got a girlfriend or a wife, and she's actually seems to think that that there might be some competition for you, or that somebody talking to you is trying to get your attention in that way, and they show some emotion to that. Well, it seems hard to believe that when you found the Filipina that you're going to be paying much attention to anybody else. But they do have a reputation for still kind of being jealous or possessive. Now, this is a good quality here, the next one about Filipinas, and it's generous. I agree with generous. The Filipino will give and give until it hurts, they say. Absolutely agree. You likely know by now how important it is for a Filipina to support her family, even if it seems like she is surrendering everything to them. When we were in Chicago, we were both surprised at the number of homeless people sitting on the sidewalks around our hotel area. There were times my wife would give a little money to them and help them out, and makes me proud of her. Another quality here listed of Filipinas is conservative. Conservative. Again, this depends on how she was brought up and what traditional values were instilled in her. To me, this is the type of woman that makes the best wife. Conservative, to me, would mean, not liberal. Conservative to me would mean she wants to, she embraces the role of a wife. She embraces the role of a mother if she has children. And she likes children, she loves children. And she embraces the role of just being a woman. She doesn't try to, have masculine qualities or look like a man or act like a man. Makes a good traditional wife, and frugal, doesn't just a good, sound, solid wife, I would take by the term conservative. And then they also list traditional here, and this, to me would, as I just explained, would probably be somewhat the same thing. And I think a foreign man would understand that as, wanting to cook, for example, likes to keep a clean house, likes to raise children, is loyal and good to her husband, all part of being a so-called traditional wife. Now, another one they list here is competitive. Filipina is competitive, they say. I'm not sure what the author meant here, because my Filipino wife is not what I would consider competitive. In fact, she despises how people can't just go to work and do their job without, constantly looking over their shoulder to see who wants their job, and is competitive. And I assume she was like this before I married her. So competitive, um, I don't know, not the way I guess I would describe competitive. I wouldn't describe my Filipino wife that way. Now, another quality I just thought of before I did this, I guess you'd call it a quality. They like to sing. Filipinas like to sing. Just yesterday and this morning too, um, my wife got up at about 5 o'clock. When I get up, and we're both in the kitchen upstairs, and she got up to prepare the food for me to take to work. I guess because she hadn't done it the night before, and she was singing a James Taylor song. This James Taylor song was "You've Got a Friend." So here she is, singing first thing in the morning for her. She's not a morning person, but she wanted to make sure she got the food ready for me, and she's chirping along, singing this song probably from the 70s. So um, it's funny how, our age gap is 27 years. I grew up with 70s music. In some ways, I wonder if music has ever been the same since. But for me to like these 70s songs and have a wife that also likes these 70s songs, you wonder how she even knows them. But in the Philippines, oddly enough, you hear a lot of 70s music, and that's just fine with me. I really like 70s music. And here's another quality they list here, and that is Filipinas avoid confrontation. Filipinas avoid confrontation. And then they say most of the time. I agree, especially when it comes to a public situation, definitely. She is more likely to want to discuss any problem at home in private, which is much appreciated and very mature. And another quality here, um, which is, I'll explain here, tends to avoid so much, tends to worry so much about the future, tends to worry so much about the future. Okay, I am confused by this comment, although I am not going to contradict the author. It's from the Philippines. They would know better than I would. My impression before marrying my wife was that she concerned herself with one day at a time. And this, I reasoned, was due to the nature of having to live that way. Even after I married her and we were waiting out the visa stage, she would tell me that I don't need to send her any money because she had enough, food to eat for the day. She just tended to live one day at a time and didn't, seem to be complaining about it. However, in this part of the his internet article, he says tends to worry a lot about the future. And now maybe that's because they accept that they don't have a lot, and so there's a certain contentment with living day to day. But that maybe behind the scenes, this man knows that they do worry about the future. And that certainly could be here in America. You know, I mean, now she's here in America with me, and yeah, we both make a lot more money than she was used to in the Philippines. But she also knows how outrageously expensive everything is here, and she even feels that here we just, work and work and work, to pay the bills. And there was a guy at work that was like 70, finally retired. And my wife said, his wife didn't want him to quit, wanted him to keep working. So, that's how it is here. If they worry in the Philippines, like he seems to think they do, that doesn't seem to change, if you're in a situation where you have more. But I never got the impression personally that my wife tended to worry much about the future. I had to plead with her, to let me send her money just for a day or two, because I told her I was your husband. I'm supposed to provide for you, and it was perfectly fine for her to accept the money from me. It didn't mean that I really didn't think she could take care of herself. What I try to do is make her feel more secure about the future, is just to show her mathematically where her money is now and how it grows, hopefully, and we talk about Social Security, how we might live in the Philippines in the future. In fact, my wife has her own 401k at work that she will be able to transfer money to the Philippines when she retires. Even if we go to the Philippines to live in about 5 years, she will be able to transfer it, but will need to pay taxes. And if she withdraws it, maybe penalty too. I'm not sure if that early withdrawal penalty applies if you're retired and in another country, but we'll find out at that time. I want her to see how we are working on our future. I do remind her that there have been recessions and depressions in this country. So not as to try to cause her to worry, but just that, the stock market here is no guarantee. And I think it's wise, if you are able to invest in the stock market with somebody that can help you, like a financial advisor, financial planner that knows how to invest so you don't get carried away and end up losing everything. I knew a guy at work one time, and I don't know how he did it. Had to be close to 60, and we were working a lot of overtime in a certain department where you were allowed 44 hours a week overtime. 44 hours a week overtime you were allowed to work. Is that right? Or is it, he was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's 84 hours. So that's 44 hours overtime a week. I mean, this guy like 60 years old. Most I ever did was like 30, 20 to 30. And some of it was 6 hours in the morning from 6 a.m. to noon. This was on the weekend, 6 a.m. to noon. And then you'd come back at 6 p.m. and work 6 hours till midnight. And you do that on Saturday, and then you do it on Sunday. Then Saturday you'd work 6 a.m. to like 6:30 p.m. And then, they needed a lot of product put out. And so this went on for the better part of a year. And he was just trying to build up his pension as much as he could. But he also didn't have much restraint, because he told me he lost like $250,000 from his 401k just because he invested in tech stocks at the time. And that's all he invested in. And when the tech stocks went bad, he lost $250,000. So, I mean, like they say, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So to help her not worry, I bring her along to the financial advisor, and we say, hon, this is where all the money goes. I don't know if you understand it, but if you have any questions to ask, do. This is kind of what the outlook has been for the last, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, lifetime, so that my, financial advisor can assure her we're not being careless with the money, so she doesn't have to worry about it. Now, they also list the quality here, persistent, and I don't have any notes on this because I'm not sure exactly what they meant by that, but that was on the list, persistent. And then another quality they mentioned was sentimental. Filipinas are sentimental. And this is why she finds it hard to throw away the box and the paper you wrapped her birthday gift with. This is their comment. And the table napkins from your first date in that upscale restaurant, and the rocks she collects from your first trip to Boracay and to Palawan, and so on and so forth. Now, that's what they said. And this sounds more like me, actually. I know my wife takes and keeps a lot of photos. I think that's a form of being sentimental. And I want a lot of photos around our house because it makes it feel like a home to me. She might be sentimental, um, but it's hard to tell because I think I'm more sentimental than she is. You know, we have this. She had this blue towel in the when we went on honeymoon that she would r- put around her hair and dry it. I always told her she looked good with that towel around her hair. And 4 years later, we still have that towel. I don't want her to throw it away. You know, it starts to wear out a little bit, but she still uses it. We wash it every week, and she uses it to dry her beautiful long black hair. And I still like that. I believe she's in our bedroom somewhere in a, she still has um, a note that I think I think I wrote it to her. She's got a couple notes there from early on when we got married, and I did write her a very long letter when she went to the Philippines here recently um, that I hope she still has. I'm almost tempted to go look for it. I hope she kept it because it was a lot of work and it was kind of recounting the first 3.5 years of our life. And so I think my wife is sentimental. I just probably am more sentimental than she is. So yeah, she's still sentimental. Now, we still have some wedding ornaments down here that I just can't part with. When she was in Cebu at the, what do they call it, the conference for Filipinos overseas, which you go to before you leave the country, she bought me a wooden calendar that uses blocks with numbers and letters to spell the date. And I can't part with it. I still have it around here. And it's set on May 10th, Sunday, you know, which is when we got married in the Philippines. And if I could have a time on it, I would put 2:30 p.m., which would have been the time of day that we got married. I even bought some placemats for upstairs with roosters on it. And she bought me a memento with a rooster on it, which I still have down here. It's actually a salt and pepper shaker. That might be the salt one. But anyway, these sorts of little things remind me of the Philippines, and that reminds me of meeting her and marrying her and all of that. Um, the other day, I got in her car to drive somewhere because she had parked my car in the garage. And when I got in and turned the car on, I was hearing songs that were, you know, part of our early experience together. So she had them on a flash drive, and so that was kind of nice. I have our wedding songs on the desktop of my computer, you know, to listen to when I am waxing sentimental. So, you know, that's a good part of marrying a Filipina, marrying any good wife, is that you can have these good moments to reflect on. And I tell my wife my favorite places on earth are where we got married and where we had our honeymoon. I'm certainly looking forward to going to those places again here, um, especially when we start to retire there. So again, this is part two of Qualities of Filipinas. She's always a Filipina to me. You know, why do men pursue Filipinas? What things do they hear about them that make them want to go thousands of miles to marry them? Well, that's what this two-part series is, and I hope some of you can pop in here and chime in with some thoughts of your own on, you know, qualities that you like about your Filipino wife, and you know, be nice to see if this list can be longer, and I'm sure it probably is if we took the time to think about it. Now, here's one very interesting Filipino quality that they mention, and it's called authoritative. The privacy guy. Hello, privacy guy. Did you know that Filipinos or Filipinas are authoritative? Well, this is what they say about that. If the Filipina girl grew up in a home where her mother wore the pants, she will most likely have the tendency to adopt the same behavior and mentality. If the man she ends up marrying turns out to be lacking in initiative, intellectual, moral, and financial capabilities, they say here that she will take control. The Filipina girl is competitive by nature, they say, and is a born leader, so this authoritative quality is just an accident waiting for a place to happen. Now, that's not my, those aren't my words. These are the words from the Filipino um, that wrote the article that generated my interest in this topic of Filipino qualities. Just say, they say, an accident waiting for a place to happen. Um, so again, these are really interesting comments. So I would take this to heart because I think you will see this from time to time, and I hope if somebody does, they would and agrees with it, they would make a comment here. I don't know the situation my wife grew up in, but I do understand this, that the elder daughter often is the breadwinner and as such is looked up to. However, mama and papa still probably make, the final decisions. I can tell my wife had this responsibility back home by some of the things that she does here. Once in a while, I tell her that we should have talked about something a little bit more before deciding to do it, although there could have been a misunderstanding, or maybe she just thought that there was no reason she couldn't take the initiative to do something. But, when we're in the Philippines, I often, see her siblings, even her family to some extent, her parents probably to some extent, following her in the things that she does, because she is a leader. And I've said that for quite a while now, since being married to my wife. I think she is a leader, that she has leader qualities. And I think that probably stems from, being the older daughter at home. It may just be part of her nature. But I've seen it. And, even at work, one of the things her new boss said when she went to another shift was they wanted to see her, you know, show more leadership. And I think the reason they said that was she's been there now for over 2 years. And a lot of people, come and go in that department. And I mean, they're working around the clock. And right now, she's working with a lot of people that you probably have less experience in it than she does. And I think they probably, like I do, recognize that she does have some good qualities in her. People will follow, my wife. And I think that's something they want to see her kind of take to a higher level at work. Now, that doesn't quite mean here that she's authoritative, but, this goes back to the family she was lived in, or that she grew up in, that the mama tended to be, the one that kind of took control of making decisions. Hi, Michael, John 14:6. Yeah, women leading can stem from fear, past experiences. Here in America, we see women leading more and more and more. I've noticed this for a few years now, that it seems that most of the supervisory positions now at work are going to women. And I think that's partly because they want it more than the guys do. And at least they're the ones that seem to be applying for those jobs. And in the political scene, I think you see more women wanting to get involved with that too. I know that's a long, involved discussion, But sometimes, yeah, it could be for a lot of reasons. That's why we can never get through a topic like that. Privacy guy, do you think qualities would vary based on location? Like a Filipina from the province would have a certain set of characteristics versus someone from the major cities. Well, that's a really, really good question, privacy guy. Based on location. Well, I don't know. I don't know why it wouldn't. I mean, responsibilities would be different in the province. You probably have to fend more for yourself. So maybe you develop some, if you are a worker, and don't just rely on, a rich foreigner taking care of everyone, that they do have to scratch, bite, and claw to earn a living. I don't know. Uh, the normal city environment, sisters, they tend to, I think they find it easier to get work, and the older sister might provide for everybody, and then if she's going to go to school, the next person up, or maybe the older brother, goes to work after he's gone to school, and he provides for someone. But there's just a lot of emphasis placed on the Filipina, especially the older daughter. So that's a good question. I really don't know what to say. A lot of these qualities, I think, probably would be there regardless of where she is. I would just speculate that anyway. Um, I'm not about to interfere with my wife's dealings with her family, as she knows about that whole dynamic better than I do. However, as a man, as a husband, I believe that the husband is the one who must take and feel responsible for the direction of the marriage. Um, I'll try not to preach on this, but if you have a situation where, like me, where I believe that, and I've told her this, my wife, I will defer to her as much as possible because I want her to be happy. However, if there comes a time when we have a situation that we're all, knotted up in, we cannot seem to agree, then somebody's got to make the call. Somebody has to be responsible for the decision, and that's going to be me. If we have to, can't make up our minds, you cannot have, I mean, it's just two people. I mean, all it takes is one person to decide that they're going to go this way against the will of the other, and you've got trouble. So I think it's totally fair, if you're a Christian, to tell your wife, um, things like, like the Bible says, the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. That's 1 Corinthians 11:3. It also says the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, in Ephesians 5:23. Now, I take that very seriously. There are, in marriage, there is equality. The husband and the wife are equal. They have different roles. And one of mine is, I tell my wife sometimes, I'm the CEO of the marriage. Okay, it doesn't mean my wife is unimportant, but I'm the CEO. I'm the one that God comes to when something isn't right. Even if it's not, my fault or my doing, I'm the one that has to figure out what to do in a way that, keeps the harmony going in our relationship. So you want to try to marry someone that you feel you can see eye to eye with, someone that will agree with the structure of your marriage when it comes to making decisions. Now, that does not mean that I am the boss. I've said this before. I am the servant leader of our marriage. I'm the one that is responsible, and I'm a servant leader. I'm the leader, but I got to serve her. That's what I'm supposed to do, and that's fine. I accept that because I think that's God knows best how things should work. So I'm not going to lord it over her. Doesn't mean she's less important than me. When Eve sinned, and she did sin first, she wasn't the first person that God talked to, because there was somebody standing next to her named Adam who failed in his responsibility to protect her. So she sinned, but he just stood there. He should have said something. He should have done something, even if it made her mad, you know. But he didn't. But he was the one God came to. And if something goes wrong in my marriage, I've said this, I'm sure, to my wife, God's going to come to me first, hon, and he's going to ask me, what are you doing about this? You know, because, and that's a big responsibility. My method is, like I said, to be a servant leader. I'm going to serve my wife. I'm going to do whatever I can to make her happy. I'm going to do whatever I can to give her a fulfilled, satisfying life. I don't really, care what I have to give up to do that, because that's, I think, the way Christ loved his church was he died for her. He did silly things like endure hell for her when she deserved it and he didn't. So sometimes love is really hard to understand. Why would a guy do that? Why would he have to do that? Well, because he's her husband, and I'm going to do everything I can to give her a better life. I am her head, but there are times when I tell her, look, we're just not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. I'm not going to just drop the hammer. I have to explain my position. And sometimes I may just have to say, look, hon, we can't do that. I can't do that. I can't allow that. Most of the time, though, I'm going to do what she wants for the sake of the relationship and for her happiness. But she must know that I'm the one that, is responsible to guide the relationship, to give it direction, obviously to pray for my wife a lot. So she might have this authoritative quality in her. And so I need to work with her, and that I want her to develop her leadership abilities at work. And what we're talking about at work is they see that the way she works hard, she works by example. A leader has to be a hard worker. He can't just be all talk. And she is a hard worker, but they probably want to see her be a little bit more verbal, be a little bit more talkative, which is not comfortable for her. But if you're going to be a leader, you also have to talk, and you have to say things sometimes that make you not the most popular person on the job. And I'm not saying this is going to happen with her overnight, but I think they want her to be more vocal and to say, this is how we do things. And she's very outgoing and friendly, and people gravitate to that. I think she has friends there because she's so outgoing and friendly. That's another Filipina quality. Filipina can go to the job and work and be happy and pleasant, and that attracts people to them. Now, if you happen to be a hard worker and you have high standards, well, then you're looking at someone that can be a leader in the area. And if she can do that, if she can lead by influence, then that's fine with me. I'm not talking here about whether a woman should be the president, of a country. I'm not going to that length here when I talk about leadership or authoritative. But you might find yourself married to a Filipina that's used to the mother in her life, calling all the shots, and so you might have to talk about decision making when you get married. The privacy guy, are there generational differences? Generational differences as to what exactly here? I'd love to answer your question. If you can if you could restate the question here. Talking about qualities of Filipinas, and they're not going to be the same for all Filipinas. If you're referring to older qualities of older Filipinas versus qualities of newer Filipinas, younger Filipinas, that's probably what you're referring to. I'm not sure that a lot probably has changed. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like a lot of things in the Philippines have been the same for a long time. And it may be that, and this is why maybe people will say, well, my Filipina is only, 22, 24 years old, but she's so mature. She seems older than that. That might be because of the influence from, her elders. And Filipinas, they say, respect their elders. I think we talked about that last week. And so if they do, they probably are going to be, a lot like their elders. Here in America, we grow up when we're young and we want to be like anybody but our parents. Maybe it's not that way in the Philippines. Maybe they value their grandparents and their parents, and they take seriously the qualities that they saw growing up, and they carry those on. So I don't know. I would like to say that there might not be as many generational differences describing, Filipina as, let's say, an American woman. Now, they also make a comment here about qualities of Filipinas, puts a great importance on gratitude. Gratitude, then they say, so much so that it is often taken advantage of by others. I didn't make any more comments on that. I wasn't sure what they meant exactly. Maybe I would use a different word. Filipinas are very giving and loyal. I know one friend of my wife said she would give her, everything she had, for her, which, yeah, I mean, so that you could say my wife has a great sense of gratitude to her friends, or maybe another word, loyalty to her friends, and would do anything. And then because of that could get taken advantage of. That may be what they're referring to. Now, here's one that's not so much a positive one. And they mentioned the crab mentality. If you heard that one before, the crab mentality of the Philippines. Their comment here was, this is one of the ugly Filipino attributes, which is rooted in jealousy and envy, which are both sins in the Bible. This simply means that she can't stand seeing somebody else reaping all the good things in life, so she finds ways to destroy that person. Amongst women, gossiping and spreading malicious rumors are the most common ways to accomplish this. If your Filipina girl, they said, had been raised right, then the only thing you will need to worry about is other people attacking her and trying to bring her down just because she is dating a white man like you, which to some means a shining, shimmering ticket to the land of milk and honey. And so, maybe that's where the competition comes down, comes to trying to drag somebody down that was successful, married a foreigner, and spread bad things about her. Maybe that's one of the reasons my wife is on the private side, because she doesn't want certain people doing things like that. I don't expect her to brag that she married an American or is living in America. Not all Filipinos are wild about living in America. And I don't know, my wife's not the type to go and show off what she has here. But again, you can see the links I'll put in the description box. You've heard of crab mentality, bringing the other person down. They list that as kind of a negative Filipino quality, but that doesn't mean that it's always going to be there. Now, this one here they mentioned, and I don't really know what it is. The word here looks like camaraderie. Camaredee. They describe it as misguided. This can also be destructive to your relationship, since the tendency here is for your Filipina girl to cover up for her friends' flaws or wrongdoings, and vice versa, to prove how much the friendship means to either of them. And I don't think I've experienced that. Apparently, they're saying that the friendships can be to such a high degree um, that they will cover up for each other's, wrongdoings just to prove how much the friendship means to either of them. So I don't know. That's just a quality that they felt like they should list. And then they also list procrastination. Um, Not sure what to say. I tend to want things done immediately or sooner, so it's possible that to me anyone would seem to be procrastinating. I don't really consider my wife a procrastinator. Um, Maybe some are. I know that uh, there's Filipino time, where if it's supposed to show up at 1 o'clock, they won't show up at 1 o'clock. It might be 2 or 3. Um, I don't know if that's what they mean by procrastination or something else. Uh, Now that would be this next quality here. They mentioned Filipina quality, tardiness. Tardiness. Your Filipina girl, unless she was raised by her parents differently, they say, will always be late to meetings, dates, and appointments. The things she will blame her tardiness on will vary, but no matter what you do, even if you move your appointment an hour late, she will still be late. They say this is a quote nationwide character flaw, which is made even worse by those who do not even bother to inform you ahead of time that they are going to be late. With my wife being in America now, she understands that she has to be on time. At work, that is watched very closely. We have appointments for things here that they might not have for in the Philippines. If she needs her car serviced here, she has to have an appointment. Um, I suppose no, you can't show up for that unless it's just an oil change or something. Otherwise, you have to have an appointment. And, my wife seems to like having appointments. Um, I would not say that this has been an issue with her. She's well aware of Filipino time, but, if you're a minute late clocking in at our place where we work, um, I think if you do that twice, it might be the same as just not showing up or some unexcused thing. I mean, they're really, really taking being late seriously. You're supposed to be on the floor at 6:05. Well, you better not clock in at 6:01 because that's going to show up on your evaluation. You got to clock in at 6 o'clock or up to 7 minutes earlier, but not after 6. So yeah, they're watching. You show up for work, they're watching. It's all on computer, and you will get talked to about it and can get in trouble for that. So I clock in 7 minutes before I'm supposed to start every day just to make sure that I'm not running late because yeah, they are watching that. So it's not going to be a problem for my wife. They also mention this quality, flirtatious. Flirtatious. I haven't seen this, but maybe the writer of the article is referring to, when she's in the Philippines. They also mention this quality of, they call historical. Historical. I've been accused of this, but it's not true. Now, I haven't seen this in my wife, but maybe the writer of the article, what they mean here is a tendency to dig up past issues in order to stress a point in an argument. Tendency to dig up past issues in order to stress a point in a current argument. I haven't seen this one myself. Um, they also say tends to be obsessed about impressing other people. Now, there might be something to that with some Filipinas. This has something to do with a pressing need for acceptance. This may either be modified or amplified depending on how she felt loved and accepted by her own family. There are some YouTube channels from overseas where I get the impression the Filipina is showing off a bit, but I could be mistaken. My wife does not want to brag or try to impress anyone just because she is here in America. I tend to believe that if we are somewhere like, Paris, and she shows photos, that she is simply happy, to be in a once in a lifetime place. She sends photos from wherever we vacation. That's just normal, I would think. Another way I know she isn't trying to impress others is because she dresses modestly and she doesn't flaunt what she has. She's Filipina will want to buy probably a nice name brand watch or purse, something like that. But I think she'll probably also maintain, you know, um, dressing modestly and, not trying to dress in a way that calls, extra attention to her. Now, the privacy guy, what qualities do you think a man needs to allow, or excuse me, needs to show to attract the Filipina's interest? Based on my experience, what qualities do you think a man needs to show to attract the Filipina's interest? Um, to attract her interest, I think they tend to like, I'll just go on a limb here, and like men who seem to be serious, responsible, hardworking, not an alcoholic, or not alcoholic, a workaholic. I once knew a lady at work that said she always wanted to marry a workaholic. Never understood that, but um, a Filipina won't want to marry someone that's devoted to his job, um, but she will want somebody that you know is reliable to go to work. She will like somebody who is not does not use profanity. She will be attracted to somebody who can kind of stay on an even keel, someone that's not overly emotional or histrionic like I can be. But we got married pretty quick, so she didn't know some things about me, and I didn't know some things about her. But um, that's fine. You get married, and you find out what you have to adjust to. Um, I think she likes somebody that's mature, well mannered, um, somebody that doesn't brag, somebody that's doesn't try to attract attention to himself, hardworking, somebody that I don't know seems committed, somebody that wants to marry certainly. Um, yeah, Filipina will get married quicker than most other women, and if you're come off as being someone that hey I want to give myself to somebody, I want to commit to somebody, then that's going to be a good quality. But I haven't really thought about that one too much. But I'm sure there are qualities that Filipinas look for in foreigners, not just that they have a good job or something like that. Um, but hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, she said she wanted to marry a workaholic, and she actually did marry a workaholic. So she got what she wanted. Um, I don't know why anybody would want to marry a workaholic unless it was just for their money. But whatever it is, you got to be yourself. Don't try to pretend like you're somebody else. I think if she can sense that the guy is sincere and that he's honest, then she will be attracted to that quality. Rodney Bishop, Rodney, I was worried if you were even still alive. Honestly, I think about you often because I hadn't heard from you. You've been conspicuous by your absence. Long time no see. Have you been in the Philippines or something? I know Michael, John 14:6, got married, was in the Philippines. Michael, are you back in the States now? But yeah, Rodney, good to see you here. Last Thursday, we talked about a couple dozen Filipina qualities. We're talking about some more Filipina qualities. You guys that are interested in Filipinas, now's your chance to tell me, is there any one or two main qualities about Filipinas that you are attracted to? We've covered, I don't know, well, probably close to 4 dozen by now. You were sick for a while, been busy too. Well, I certainly hope you're feeling better. And I'm glad you're alive and well. We're still going here at Love Beyond the Sea, trying to help men realize the virtues of Filipina, the value of getting married, not being alone, don't give up. And that's what I want to do. I want to help guys to find love beyond the sea. And I know some of you gentlemen have. Another quality that they list here is tolerant. Tolerant. This is often confused with patience, though patience is another common Filipina attribute. They say tolerance is a more outstanding quality. The Filipina has an exceptional ability, they're saying this in a bad way now, to tolerate lying, cheating, and oftentimes verbally, physically abusive partners. So much so that no matter how often the couple splits up, they manage to get back together time and time again. It says it blows my mind, and they say again, I blame the upbringing here. The Filipina who was taught by her parents never to tolerate such behavior or treatment from anyone will not possess this rather detrimental quality. You know, that would be that would be a bad quality. Sometimes a woman will get physically abused, and that Center for that Conference for Filipinos Overseas I mentioned earlier, they tell you where to go when these things happen, so that she doesn't have to be tolerant of it. Where to call, where to go, where to get refuge, what to do, so that if that does happen, they don't have to be overly tolerant. I do agree on the comment about patience. I think I know my Filipino wife well enough to know that she would not tolerate any mistreatment from me. This seems to suggest a certain amount of feeling inferior, perhaps, a lack of having self respect, when somebody tolerates being mistreated. I think it saddens and angers me to know that there are foreigners who abuse their Filipino wives verbally and or physically. Their femininity, Rodney Bishop. That was the first one I mentioned last week because it's the first one you see, the beauty, and beauty and femininity could be two different things. Strength of culture, hardworking, dedication to marriage and family. I agree, Rodney. Femininity, strength of culture, hardworking, dedication to marriage and family. If I knew that I could marry someone with those qualities, I mean, I think they would move to the top of my list. Absolutely, I've heard that from so many people. You know, my wife is, she's feminine. She's not covered, in tattoos. She likes to act like a woman, smell like a woman, look like a woman. And I like that. Doesn't cuss like a sailor like some women do. Hardworking for sure. I mean, I've never heard the term, about a Filipino. She's lazy, something like that. And I don't know if it's something my wife started, but where we work, I don't know. She might have been the first. I think she was the only Filipina there. Trying to get something out of the way here, and they've hired, 3 or 4 since her, maybe a handful. In fact, she works with another one in her department. So hopefully they've seen some things from her, and they say, "Wow, this woman is hardworking," and maybe there's something in the culture about that. Dedication to marriage and family. I wish I had that elusive statistic of, percentage or success rate, divorce rate of foreigners and Filipinas versus, marriages in the West. Because people say, well, these marriages with Filipinas don't have as high a divorce rate with foreigners. Maybe that is. But I do think that they they like being married. They take marriage seriously. They take being a mother seriously. They take being respectful and teaching good values seriously. Well, I mean, those are great things. The privacy guy. I think for me at least, the quality I most admire is their commitment to the marriage, even during hard times. And sometimes those hard times, well, maybe I don't think you're talking about the hard times when the guy is being, physically or verbally abusive, but tough times, something happens to the health of the man. I think that if the husband, is good to his wife, his Filipino wife, um, something bad happens to him, I think she just steps up and she just works harder or works longer or does whatever she has to do to help out her husband, until he can get back on his feet, even if he isn't able to. When adversity hits, I can see a Filipina, staying committed to that marriage. Um, Other people have said, well, you should have heard what happened to me. I got taken advantage of. As soon as the money dried up, as soon as that well dried up, she was gone. Um, that happens, but I can also see a Filipina just being pretty no nonsense about her marriage. She made a commitment. Now she's going to make it work, and hopefully that's the way all of your Filipinas will be. Yeah, I've heard of them having commitment to marriage even during hard times. Um, that's probably why people say Filipinas make great wives. Well, why is that? What makes a great wife? That's hopefully some of that comes out here in these two live streams. She's always a Filipina to me. Billy Joel hit song from back in the 70s. At least I think that's what it was called. Um, Lots of good qualities about Filipinas. Um, I probably did not mention that they like to cook. There's another one. My wife was up this morning. Her schedule's kind of, it's different than mine now, but she didn't have to get up. Normally she wouldn't have, but she got up at 5 o'clock and she must have been cooking for a couple hours. I went to work, came home, and it still smelled like, she would just been cooking. And she wasn't making anything for me, I don't think. I eat about 10 things and that's it. I've always been happy to eat just the same things pretty much. That's good enough for me, I could probably live on hamburger helper. But she was up cooking probably some kind of Filipino food this morning, and the place smelled really good. All three of us were up this morning at 5 o'clock. My mother, who lives with us, got up to make coffee. My wife was up cooking, and I was getting my food ready, and I mean my breakfast food. My wife gets the food ready for break and lunch at work, and I've got the same thing, of course, that I eat every breakfast. So Filipinos love to cook, and that's one thing that some Westerners say they wish the Western women would do again is take pride in cooking, not just getting frozen dinners or having to go out all the time. Enjoy cooking good, healthy food, and I think we may even host um, a Filipino couple this Friday. My wife was talking about she probably wants to cook for them. She just met them last week, so yeah, we might be meeting some new people here this weekend. Now, I only have one more quality here, just listening what's going on upstairs, and that they list, and that is thoughtful. Thoughtful. The Filipino will always remember birthdays, anniversaries, and other special occasions you can possibly mark on your calendar. It will always go out of her way to get you a gift, no matter how small. It's the thought that counts, is one of a Filipina girl's favorite mottos in life, and she really does take it to count. Now, Filipina tends to have a lot of these special days to remember. And, my wife, she's like that. When we had Black Friday, she went out with a couple of Filipina friends and they went shopping. And she bought me this really nice tripod for a camera. And I had told her like a year ago, it'd be nice to have a tripod, a really nice one. And she got this one for like a third or maybe three-fourths off of the price on Black Friday. It's a really nice one. So she didn't forget. And she got that one for me. And, so yeah, I think they do remember and they do like to buy gifts. And, as far as days to remember, I'm probably the one in our relationship that remembers the days. I'm going to do a video. I've already written it on monthsaries. Monthsaries. Those are the days that in your relationship you say this is the second monthsary of our meeting, or going out to eat at this place, or whatever special occasion was. They up until a year they count it by months. And I've got a list of my special monthsaries, and I won't do it now, but I still remember what those days are, and probably always will, because marrying a Filipina is a really big experience. Now, Michael, John 14:6, you probably have some monthsaries, although your relationship, you're newly married, but you might have some monthsaries from the times the times together before that. Yeah, monthsaries. I did that with my wife for like the first 2 years, and then I actually didn't. I wanted to do a video on it, and I found out that you're supposed to stop counting after 12 months because then it becomes an anniversary. Duh, But I just kept thinking, well, hon, it's the 4th, and this is when and it's the 17th, and this is when we first met, and so on and so forth. But those days are kind of burned in my mind, and even though they're anniversaries now, I still think of them. So when we go to the Philippines, my wife has been thinking about what to bring and storing them up long before we leave. This goes back to being thoughtful, Filipina quality of thoughtfulness. And we usually max out the luggage requirements for the airport. And last time we went, we got 2 extra bags. And that was an extra $400, but we had lots of stuff to bring. And so we did that. My wife likes to get the children, I call them our children, but they're nieces and nephews in the Philippines, a gift, and that's fine. We don't have children of our own. It's possible we won't. And like I tell my wife, her family is my family, and if we had more family here than we do, which is just about my mother and my aunt, her sister, and her son, that's about all we have, and they're not even in the same city anymore. But my wife embraces them just like they're her family. She buys them gifts for Christmas. In fact, she bought my mother her first ever electronic device, I would call it, a tablet. She bought my aunt a tablet. She's always showing them how to do things and buying gifts, because that's just the way a Filipina is. If you marry a good Filipina, bring her home. Your family is her family, and I certainly hope your family embraces her, like my mother has. Wish my sister were still alive, because she would she would really love my wife. My sister told me I would end up marrying a Filipina. I scolded her for that because I thought that's impossible. Don't you dare say that. I can't even find anybody here, And about a year after she passed away from cervical cancer, um, I met my wife and we got married. And so my sister never got to see that, but she did predict it, so she was right. So I want to be as good to my Filipinas family as she has been to mine. So I'm gonna just recap tonight's qualities. If you men can think of something else or anything else, uh, feel free to share that. But tonight we talked about, Filipinos love to sing. We're passionate, religious, affectionate, romantic, emotional, overreacts at times, ultra sensitive sometimes, possessive, generous, conservative, traditional, competitive, avoids confrontation, tends to worry about the future, persistent, sentimental, authoritative, puts a great importance on gratitude, can have a crab mentality, something they call camaraderie. At least that's what it looks like to me. I think they're talking about, friendships, maybe in a way taken to an extreme. Procrastination, tardiness, flirtatious, historical, as in digging up past issues, tends to be obsessed about impressing others, tolerant, and thoughtful. And probably at 2 in the morning tonight, I'll think of a couple more that just escaped me here. But those are, over these two times, we've probably covered 53, 54 Filipina qualities. And I should state here that, um, in case anybody gets the impression that I'm thinking that telling people that marrying a Filipina is always a rose garden. No, of course not. We all have our days and our ways, and there's going to be clashing in a relationship, even with a woman as wonderful as a Filipina. Um, that's just the way it is. But I still believe marriage is better than being alone. Um, there might be some people even telling, younger guys, hey, you're better off to be alone. You'll just get you'll just get divorced. They'll take all your money. Um, it's a big world, and there are women who don't do that, who would appreciate a good, honest man who will treat her right, take care of her, allow her to help her family or help her family, and person doesn't have to go as long as I did without anyone in their life. And so, yeah, we met online almost 4 years ago to the day. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It seems like yesterday. So, anyone out there watching this now or that will watch this later, if you're still single, you don't want to be single, you think you'd be better off being married, you're probably right. So, one of the things you can do is look for a woman overseas. And I'm going to have a video about that coming up Sunday or Monday with a new phrase I'm going to coin that is descriptive of marrying a woman overseas to hopefully make it a little bit easier for people to remember, because Filipinos make great wives, but they're not perfect. If you stick around Love Beyond the Sea long enough, hopefully you will learn that, well, I will try to help you learn with, how we handle a difficult situation. Because like I said earlier, I'm the husband. I take full responsibility for the marriage. And that's a lot of pressure. If my wife is screwing up somehow, not that she would, and she doesn't, I got to figure out what to do about it. And I have to, I have to take responsibility. If there's something in our marriage that isn't right, I'm the one that has to fix it. I may not have been directly responsible, but I got to find a solution with my wife. And that's just part of, being a husband, I think, and being a servant leader, which is what I want to do. I think a wife respects that if the guy, goes out of his way to show her how important she is. I think that's something that will tend to work out more positively than negatively. So, everybody here, I'm glad you dropped by and made some comments. Rodney, I'm glad you're still alive. and everybody else. Rodney, I actually tried to find an old email because I know we've corresponded before, and I couldn't find one anywhere. Because honestly, I was going to say, hey, you're okay. I haven't heard from you for a while, and so really, you took care of something tonight that was on my mind. And that's how you were doing, and so the next live stream, I haven't decided. I need to decide if I'm going to do one on the same day every week. I don't know, guys, because some people don't even do them until they have 1,000, 2,000 subscribers. I would rather not wait till that long, just because I like the interaction. I certainly like going off the script. You got to have something to talk about, and you don't want to just go all over the place. But once we're done with that, we can talk about anything. But you can't do that if you're just doing a regular upload. So I hope whoever watches this will have learned more about Filipinas than I did. I know you did. I didn't know much at all when I went to marry my wife. Thanks, Rodney. I had heard from others. They made good wives. They were kind of conservative and traditional, and certainly very attractive to me. Always, always, always been attracted to a Filipina. And I just cannot believe at night that I can look over and I'm looking at a beautiful Filipina. It's just a wonderful thing. And so tonight and last Thursday, you're able to learn about Filipinas, and look forward to making more videos in the future. I've got lots of ideas, many of them to talk about. And then one day, hopefully, when I can retire, we'll be moving to the Philippines, doing videos from the Philippines, and we'll still try to talk about relationships, of course, and what it's like to be living with, or having her family live with us. Just like my mother lives with us now, we'll be living with some of her family will be living with us. I guess it's the way to put it, and that'll add a whole new element to our relationship. But we have survived the age gap, 27 years. That has not deterred our marriage from being a satisfying one. We have survived my wife coming to America, another no-no. And I have a video on that called 29 Ways to Prevent Your Filipina from Becoming Americanized. You might want to check out. We have survived that. We have survived my mother living here with us, which is not a typical dynamic, but she's older, and we wanted to help her out financially. And my wife felt like she shouldn't be living in this house by herself. So we decided, if everybody wants to, we'll move in together, and we have survived that. And I give my Filipina a lot of credit for that. So I don't anticipate a different dynamic in the Philippines being an issue either. We'll see as time goes by. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Still the work week, so probably most of us still have to go to work in the morning. So thank you for letting me have the privilege to talk to you tonight about Filipina qualities. And until next time, this is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea.